Welcome back to the Daily Edge, here with my brothers TJ and Todd. And we spend a considerable amount of time talking about faith, family, fitness, youth sports. So today, we're going to have another episode on youth sports. I'm just sitting here thinking some of this is going to be pretty raw with some recent news that I received, but youth sports has become such an icon, right? They talk about
Idol,
yeah, such an idol in our lives. Like they talk about, we get so obsessed with our kids' success in general, and sometimes that's grades or there's other things, but it feels like most parents in general are obsessed with success and how they define success, which is generally winning in something. And so I just want to process a little bit with you guys. Like, how have you approached that? Do you struggle with that personally with your kids? And let's kind of work through some of this.
I think it's extremely difficult. We're obviously all very competitive. Part of that is, I don't know if competitiveness is genetic or if there's an element of that is genetic or it just has to do with the environment you grew up in, but certainly we're very competitive, and I think that complicates things for us. There are some people that don't share that competitiveness, and I think probably do a great job making youth sports what it probably is more productive as, which is fun. Like Angel, I feel like, for example, does a great job with that. I don't think she's necessarily chasing the next W or did they win the soccer game. She's one that jumps out that I feel like has that balance. But for those of us that struggle, I think it's hard. It's a really challenging thing. And I think what makes it so difficult is when you put so much time, energy, and resources into it. When you're finding yourself putting in 5 to 10 hours a week, either shuttling people to and from practices, watching practices, and you're spending hundreds, if not thousands of dollars a month on practices, programs, development, that sort of thing, that's where it starts to get really difficult. I feel like the more you invest emotionally, I think the harder it is to ignore the results in a sense.
Yeah, no, I think you're right there. I think for me, I've been able to at least, and I think this is where, if I'm critical of someone, which I shouldn't be, it would be, I feel this exact same way, but I guess my emotions come into play when the effort isn't reciprocated. I don't necessarily at this point care too much about the results because I'm in it every day and I know how hard it is. And, the more we've lived through a very unique time period where the information is so much more readily available. And so a lot of the old wives' tales or misconceptions about certain things are just through sheer data and sheer exposure and, all of these insights from training in whatever in different sports. You're starting to realize that, I think what I've realized is that it's now about finding their best on whatever path they're on and wanting them to, again, mirror your effort. I think that's where it gets frustrating. I think where I would lend guidance is, I was talking to somebody today. We had a 2-hour lunch, and one of the topics of conversation was like, the reality of it is, man, and I know this is like a cliche statement that gets made a lot, your kid's not going pro. Your kid's probably not even playing high school. So to get caught up in the outcome of a game is that, that's not where it is. It's like, how can I help them? I spend a lot of time thinking about how can I, I remember Dad telling us that when he coached at the boys club, there were multiple ways that he would have to coach kids to get the best out of those types of people, whatever their personality is. And so I find myself spending a lot of time thinking about, okay, how can I approach this to get the effort that I know they can put forth to get them to what their best is versus we can talk a little bit as we talk through this, somebody who is, watching a game where their kid is getting beat handily and thinking that them losing their mind and yelling at a ref is going to solve any problems. I don't that's an area that I don't operate within.
It's a really, it feels like there's some parents that, I wouldn't say they don't care, but we went and saw a comedian, Nate Bargatze, and he said, find something that your kids are good at and then make it real important, right? Because it feels like one of the things that I've always tried to do is I've tried to instill confidence, right? Whether it doesn't really matter what it is, but like find something they're good at and make them feel important. There's an element of it for me as you want your kid to experience the teamwork and being part of it. Some parents do a really good job where they don't put a lot of emphasis in this, and there's not a lot of pressure. And then, I have my moments. I've cycled in both of those sides of making it super important and making it effort based, but wanting to see them be part of something. I think is more of kind of what it lands for me. And when they do have success, it's hard not to want that to build, right? It's like, oh, you seem to like this. You seem to work hard at this. You seem to have a little bit of a natural talent at this. And then I think you lean in even harder. Mm-hmm. And then when it gets taken away, so we got news whenever this comes out, I'll probably be a couple weeks now, where my oldest daughter, who's going to be a freshman, who's spent the last 6 or 7 years playing with a group of girls, and there's tremendous talent throughout that group. They're going to be freshmen in high school. They're finally here. And there's a lot of anticipation, and they got a new coach, and we're all like for 6 years been building, and they're playing on a high school team, travel team right now, and they're doing pretty well. They're winning all kinds of games, and she went down with an injury on Sunday, and she's out. She's got to have surgery, and she's going to miss her entire freshman year. And that's been really hard for me to kind of digest. I'm just trying to like think through. She seems to be pretty good with it. I can't quite pinpoint why. I just don't feel settled about it yet. I can't, if it was just the anticipation, it was the expectation we've talked about, or thinking about the excitement or the camaraderie of them all playing together for 4 years. And now she's got to watch from the sidelines. And so I shouldn't feel that way. I don't know why I feel the way I feel, because it's still really new, but trying to process that of, if it was just a sport, it was just a hobby, like it wouldn't be that big a deal, right? Like in the video of the Chinese farmer, we don't know, like this maybe is a good thing, right? Because it prevented something else, or maybe it's an opportunity where she can become an absolute beast in the weight room and get really strong and fit, and she's great, like there's so many positives that can come of it. I'm having a hard time finding any right now.
Well, I mean, I feel like sports, if we look at it as the vehicle, right, as opposed to the, one of the, I mean, like an absolute necessary ingredient. Like I think, we're pretty good at, for me, hearing her, she told me this afternoon, I was over at Trent's house and talked to her, and she, because I've been wondering what's going on. Obviously, I think we all have that fear. I have an extreme fear of that happening to Kay, and missing out and whatever. But I think we're good at reframing it. And it's like, we know what we want to get out of sports, which is all the secondary. You can do hard things. If you show up every day and you stay consistent and you do those things, you're going to generate results. And that is a formula you can apply until you're 100. And that's what we're talking about here. Put your best foot forward, show up every day, and do whatever's in front of you, and learn to, learn the different mechanisms, and learn what you need to use to make these difficult things tolerable. And I think sports, we've talked about a lot, is the most obvious way to do that without serious repercussions. So when that vehicle gets taken away, it's like, devastating. And I think, I'm sure it'll take you a while, but I think once you do reframe it, and it's like, okay, what's the vehicle now? Okay, maybe it's not soccer, but it's, again, developing habits around other things that will maybe contribute to that. But ultimately knowing that the goal is knowing that, like, I think on one of the prior podcasts I mentioned the Miss Hoosier Soccer, right? I know I did. It was one of the last ones that we did. Who didn't play club soccer? She's the best soccer player in the state and didn't play club. Like, you can't train. I'm trying to help myself. Like, you can train to get great, but you got to find your great. Somebody like that, to play. She plays 2 varsity sports, and like, that's not. You can't out train that. So it's like, yeah, it's tough because I can't imagine what you're going through, but and then that's kind of where my head is on it.
Yeah, I think it. Just zooming out and speaking more broadly, I think the challenge for me is it's just so easy to lose perspective. And I think this happened in all aspects of life, right? Where anytime you get into something and your brain naturally narrows in on that situation, we all get upset about, or whether that's sadness, frustration, anger, whatever, about a lot of trivial things day in and day out. This is a lot more of a substantial thing. But I think for me, even as I think about some of the times that I've gotten frustrated at the kids' youth sports related type things, I have to distance myself. Like, if we're talking about practical ways that I have found a little bit of success to balance this, when I distance myself, then that perspective comes back, right? Like, they talk about getting lost, what's the unable to see the forest through the trees, right? You just get so into the weeds that it's really hard to see the big picture at certain given points in time. And so for me, like, I had some frustrations with Noah and his in basketball. And so really I had Jenna start taking him to some of the practices and attending some of the games just so I could, like, mentally reset and kind of reframe a more realistic, informed perspective that, I wasn't, like, really in the middle of. I wasn't the frog in the boiling pot of water. So I just think it's very easy to lose perspective on youth sports as well as many other things day to day.
I think the thing that that's good. The thing I'm like, why is it so important? I think that's where I'm at right now. It's like, why does it?
Well, because it is important, right? Like, it is something that, like you said, you're worried it could mess with her confidence, right? You see your friends out there, and you're worried that it could affect socially because she's not, like, right, but at the same time, I think we know that there will be a silver lining. I mean, more often than not, I would say way more often than not, it's always a comeback story. Like, yeah, there are times where it's time to walk away after significant injuries over and over and over again. But, I think you're right. Like, zooming out and saying, look, yeah, she's not going to be playing, but I bet she'll be on the sidelines. She'll be at the practices with the girls. She'll be doing all the social things. So check, right? And then there will be some other things that she can focus on. Again, I think it's just spinning. It's probably, yeah. I mean, again, back to the original statement, I think it is important. And I would be very concerned too, because there's this feeling of, like, she's going to be left out. She's going to fall behind. She's going to, she's put all this time and effort in. You've put all this time and effort in. But again, I think back to my earlier statement about, not being able to outwork some of these kids that are freaks. She's extremely talented here. So what she's going to do, when we were talking about this earlier today in that lunch I had, it's like you have these kids that are doing, like, the dribble up, right? The soccer dribble up. You could do that, as at, like, her age specifically, you could do dribble up 20 hours a week. But if you play against a kid who runs a 11-second 100 and is quick, doesn't matter. It might get you that 1%. Your little extra footwork might get 1%. And so my point is, she's going to tackle all of these other things, generate all these other habits and doing the things that she can do in her natural gift. She doesn't need to put, it would be nice if she could, but to participate and to do things at that elite, because she's been injured a couple of times. And every time she comes back, 6 weeks off, she's like right back here. And I think that she's lucky to have the skill and the ability that she doesn't need a lot of this other stuff. And maybe that helps you from a perspective longer term to realize, and you've done a good job. You've kind of led the way with that anyways. You were talking about Memorial Day games. You're like, we're not going, because it's not that real. And I think maybe you start to realize that, there she is into drama for this month, or she's doing whatever. It's not as important. I've seen it's not as important because I've seen her come back. And oh, by the way, we've developed all of these other good habits in parallel of that. And it really changes the entire perspective. So maybe it helps with that in the long term.
How do you guys think this applies to us? And you look at the things that we think are super important and the things that we value. How do you think this applies to broader life and not just kids?
When you say this,
well, just this idol, arguably, if nothing's super important and you don't have it as an idol, when it gets taken away, you don't get upset, right? You just kind of oh, well, that's unfortunate, but it kind of is what it is. You kind of just you stay calm, even keel. We all have an idol, hopefully most of it's Jesus, but I'm sure there's other ones. And in lieu of, maybe it's making money, maybe it's whatever, maybe it's building races, maybe it's building businesses, where if it was gone tomorrow, it would destroy our mentality, our world. And it's probably based upon things and stuff. And
yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, I think that this gives us the opportunity. I don't know. I think it really builds resilience. I don't think that, one of the things I've been talking to a lot of people about lately is identity. And being cautious to, we see the tale old as time where I'm dealing with this right now. I've got to be real coy as I talk through this, but where there's kids at a particular age group and there is somebody involved with coaching them who is putting them on a pedestal for accomplishments at a very young age and making it an identity. And I think we've seen that. We would call it the high school guy, the guy that peaked in high school, from our generation, where instead of utilizing the things we just talked about earlier, which I think are built through scenarios like this. So having an idol, and let's say it is a particular sport, and you get it taken away, all of a sudden, and this is a life skill that I feel really proud to have, and I think you guys have the same one. All right, how do I get there a different way? Because if you never have that challenge in front of you and you do just let it go, I don't necessarily think that's a good thing. So it's okay, I can't pursue this through this path. I got to figure this out. And it may take 4 or 5 different attempts, but you're going to develop different thought patterns and different perspectives on how to ultimately tackle whatever it is that you want. And so I think, this is going to build crazy resilience as long as, I think where it gets scary is when you make this the identity. And that's the problem. I think pursuing the goal is not the thing. But if you're not taking and applying the foundational rules we were just talking about, which is, the consistency, putting the best effort forward and all of those things, those are the lessons you're supposed to learn and you're supposed to continue to reapply. I think it does get dangerous when it becomes an idol, and it's about the accomplishment itself, not the journey. And I think anybody who's experienced a lot of sports and a lot of realizes that you listen to any pro athlete. It's the journey. I mean, even any pro coach, the day after they've won the championship, we're back in the room. It was cool, we'll celebrate, but we're back in the room. And I think that's where people who are still in athletics and who've been there their whole lives understand that this 8-year-old soccer game, if your kid wins it, that's not what it's about. Because the last thing you want, and I mentioned that situation earlier with these kids in this certain age group, I don't want my daughter looking back and being, man, I was the fastest 7th grader. Remember when? And all of her comfort and self-worth comes from becoming the fastest 7th grader. I don't want you to ever think you're the fastest anything. I want you to continue to work towards whatever that next goal is. That's where I think it gets dangerous when it comes to it being an idol.
Something you said triggered. I was speaking to a group of kids recently. I put up 2 pictures of someone climbing a mountain, and one of the things I'm going to tell you that story, but right before that, it was like if I could, go back and tell myself, whatever at their age, what they were all in high school. It's like the one thing I wish I knew back then that I know now is there's no summit to the mountain. Mm-hmm. And the first picture is a picture of a guy scaling the wall straight up, like free solo scaling. And he's got a rope and he's got a couple people dangling from it, when he's climbing. And kind of reminds me of like my initial time and when I started building the company IMG is like, I was scaling straight up that wall, and I was dragging my family with me, and they were hanging by a rope and we were hanging by a thread, and I was climbing because I thought there was a summit to get to. And then the other picture on the other side was the picture of a group of people climbing up a mountain, and they were kind of looped back in the sunset, and it was just like, this is where I'm at in my life now. And it's reminded me that it is about the journey. There really is no summit to it. It's this group experience of being part of something. And when you see that gets taken away for whatever reason, I think that's where some of the emotion comes in. But I couldn't agree more.
I think the pain of these sorts of things is twofold. I think one, it's community. I think we're all we've surrounded ourselves with communities that value similar things. So you're embedded in a community that really values running and achievements in running. You're around a community, at least with respect to Hadley, that really values soccer and success in soccer. That's why you guys have been building this program, CIFC, and across all age groups. And so I think that whole phrase, you become the 5 people you associate with the most, naturally that community that you're embedded in, has a set of values. And if you feel like something's happened that jeopardizes how well you fit into that system or community, I think that hurts. And I think this actually goes back to a hardwiring from thousands of years ago as we evolved, because we all lived in small tribes back in the day. And in order to survive, you needed to be a part of that tribe because different members of that tribe performed critical functions that kept the group alive. If you got cast out of that tribe, you died. And that was it, unless, so as we've evolved, I think that hard wiring has remained. The people that survived were the ones that obsessed about being a part of the tribe and staying a part of the tribe. And their whole mindset was like, I've got to continue to, at all costs, remain a part of this tribe and staying fit in. So I think some of this is our brain that is through survival of the fittest, hardwired to fit in. And when something happens that jeopardizes our fit within this community, I think it feels really, really painful. Now, in today's day and age, it's not a life or death situation. So I think the stakes are nowhere near as high, but our brain doesn't understand that. Our brain still feels that and processes that as physical pain and potentially something more severe than it is. So I personally think this goes way back. And I also think it is anytime any of these things happen, and I feel like, and you guys may be the same, there are different communities in my life that I'm interacting with, and in interacting with each of them, it makes me rethink, my overall, like who my community is and what I'm valuing and that sort of thing. But it certainly does challenge what our community values. right? I mean, I think those people who are spiritual or who are religious, that's it, right? That's kind of the primary community. And if it doesn't jeopardize their ability to go to heaven, those that are super devout and super focused on that, if it doesn't jeopardize their ability to go to heaven within some set of perspective, they tend to have maybe a better job processing that. You know what I find really interesting? And I'd be interested in your guys' take on this. Collegiate coaches or people who have experienced very high levels of success in certain sports seem to be some of the best at handling this or dealing with these things, like in terms of their kids and what they want to play. I've seen, I've talked to professional golfers who are like, if my kid wants to play golf, great. If not, like, I have no issue with that. I've seen like coaches like Jeff Clark. I feel like Jeff is at least in our discussions, I feel like he's great at, he's not obsessing over his kids being, collegiate basketball players. Sometimes, and I don't know if you guys have experienced that same thing, but it's an interesting observation that I've made. And I don't know why that is necessarily, of how, all they've had to sacrifice to get there or the dysfunction they've seen in getting there. But that's another observation I want to throw out.
I've wondered if that is based on perspective and understanding, kind of what I was talking about earlier. Like, there are levels and you can only affect them so much. And we talk about raising kids. Like, you're not going to change core personality traits of your child, but your goal is to make them a good person and make them, like, there's some foundational things there from a moral perspective that you're trying to help guide them on the path. And I wonder if it's like, when you've gotten to that level, you've experienced all of these different levels of athlete, different levels of player, different levels of skill, and you realize how little some of this stuff really matters. I was talking to, again, refer to another conversation I had earlier, but we were talking about Jim Ryan. For those of you who don't know who Jim Ryan is, he was, when Sports Illustrated originally did their article on the best high school athletes ever, he was number one. Mm-hmm. He ran 350 something in high school on cinder track. He started running his sophomore year in high school, and his coach it was a swim coach. So he had them running swimming workouts on the track, meaning like in swimming, you can work out 10, 20, 25 hours a week because there's no impact, right? And so he was having them do like 40 by 400. Because he's like, well, 400 in the pool or 100 in the pool takes this long, and that's about the same time as a 400. So I'm going to have the guy took his mile time from like 5:38 to 4:11 in a year, and that goes to like you can't, you know what I mean? Like if your kids, like that's a different thing. And I think you realize as a coach at a high level, it's like you've seen it all, man. You've seen the kid that's busted his butt since he was 6. And where that got him, and you've seen the kid who started playing basketball like Pascal Siakam when he was 17 and now he's in the NBA. And you realize how frivolous it is to worry and stress about all of these other things where even, and for me, it's like, even though we know that, it's still hard to separate from that. It's like when I would tell mom I was getting a D on my report card and she'd be like, fine. And then it would actually come home a D and she's like losing her mind. I'm like, but I told you. And it's the same thing. Like, I know, we probably really recognize deep down that it really isn't about this, my kid's going to get their college paid for and this is the summit to said mountain. Like deep down, I think everybody really knows, but these guys have seen it and they realize like, what are you doing? Like, you're not, like, I don't care how much your kid practices. He's not even going to be Braden Smith. Like, and that's where they're able to, maybe, I mean, that's my perspective on it. I don't know. You've been around more college coaches than we have.
Well, I'm just wondering if there's for what profession that a parent is in, it seems that there's just not a push by the parent for them to go into that. I wonder how much that plays. Like, I'm not pushing my kids to own IMG or be a business owner. I could care less. I'm wondering, I think there's some truth into the fact that they've they're in the sport, they've seen the levels, they know what's realistic. But I wonder if it's just kids are naturally maybe drawn more to what they see their parents doing, and the parents are like, I don't care if you do that or not.
Do you think it's because they've realized in that particular vertical that there's no summit?
Probably.
Like, you realize there's no summit there. We've never experienced collegiate athletics, right? And so is there still a perceived summit subconsciously that we're striving for? And those that have realized there's no summit are like, have more perspective about that?
Have fun. Like, if there's a way to enjoy the journey but still compete, like, 'cause I think that's it. It's like you want to compete and you want to have some level of success and confidence in whatever level you're playing at. You want to win from time to time, and you want to be motivated to win more. Like that, I think again, it helps you build confidence. But yeah, I think that's exactly it.
Well, maybe it's level of exposure and level of knowledge. I mean, you've talked about it a lot. You've talked about it a lot. How many times have you had a coworker, employee, or somebody or you're mentoring be like, "Yo, stop spinning cycles on this. Like, what are you doing? Like, you're driving you probably a lot. You're driving yourself nuts about something that's so insignificant in the bigger picture. But again,
every day.
Yeah, they can't see the forest through the trees. They're so in the weeds, and it's like, and it's like, whoa. And I think that's the same thing probably from a collegiate coach perspective. Like, hey, doing dribble up, chopping your kid's head off because he only did 4 hours of dribble up this week instead of 5. Like, yo, because I feel like I've been thinking about this a lot lately. I feel like so much returns to the mean, man. Like, you hear it all the time, and I see it, and it's like, I'll give Dathan Ritzenheim's a good example, right? Super, super gifted endurance runner, coach for the on athletics team. I don't care if my kids run. Superstar runners. He didn't care, but they have huge engines, and they saw mom and dad do it, and it just happened. And I think like maybe it's recognition that your kids, there will be things off the beaten path, but Tim Daly, businessman, sales guy, we're all a little bit different in that regard, but kind of similar. And I feel like that's, they realize that you're just not going to affect it so much. And they probably also, I mean, that's kind of my thought, right? You start to realize how insignificant a lot of these like ridiculously over the top efforts are in certain circumstances. And like, hey, this is maybe what you should really focus on versus some of this ancillary stuff.
Yeah, you mentioned, I think a lack of knowledge is maybe it. I mean, it's this kind of blind hope that maybe a lot of this stuff matters.
Right. Maybe my kid will be Tiger Woods.
Yeah. Or like maybe if we just obsess about these things. I was in a conversation the other day about Eternize, and somebody kind of, you guys were actually in the room for that meeting, and someone made the comment of like, worrying about words on a website versus finding, the right partner who's willing to write a check for $150,000 to change a bunch of people's lives, right? And so I wonder if it's just that knowledge about what's important is like trying to, no offense to the people who are trying to tweak the words on the website, but the reality is that's probably not going to move the needle, right? And so I think there are probably, maybe it's that knowledge or perspective that, micromanaging all of those things within that particular vertical is, 90% a waste. And I think it's hard, right? Because for those of us that are in this journey, you guys mentioned it's for the small things. It's for the teamwork. It's for the pursuit of something. It's for, for me, it's for, maximizing potential and achieving a certain standard of excellence. And the natural thing to do is like continue to fine tune, right? It's like in this and this and this. And well, if you did this would help. And maybe this would help. And like, there's a portion psychologically where you're turning so many dials and knobs that the real important stuff gets lost in it.
Well, it's like dad teaching us how to golf back in the day, like your golf swing. Think about these 700 things in your backswing. Like, whoa, maybe you just get my friends out here so I can play with my friends and have fun. And then, you think about when Phil Dodig developed a love for golf, it was with the Chins or whoever, and he was his friends, and he was out there playing 36 a day for an entire summer. And maybe that is like at this age, because every pro athlete and coach says that. Just keep it easy, keep it fun, have their friends around. Now, curating that group of friends so they're playing basketball with the best of the best. And I mean, there are definitely different things you can do, but like those are probably the most important things. Let's get that foundation established, friends and enjoyment and consistency. And then they will probably lead you to like, Dad, I want to get better at this, get better at this, get better at that. And then that
1,000%.
maximizes.
I think you're 1,000% right. I've only been around the youth sports world for the better part of 6 years, but I am very convinced that community in that particular sport, not just the enjoyment, but also the competitiveness, competing against other kids your age and enjoying other kids your age, to me is the gasoline that will fuel a kid to a more unusual standard of excellence in that sport. Kids just don't have the willpower to do it solo without that fuel of enjoyment and or competitiveness. And when I say competitiveness, also friends that are valuing and are going to reward them for achieving certain levels of success or excellence.
I think too often, again, I kind of mentioned a situation earlier. I think too often, again, I'll kind of go back to this. There's a group of kids who are in a specific age range that are elite at their sport. And the reason they are elite, in my belief, is that the person who has brought them together has, you get a couple of those kids that are special, 2 or 3, and then you get like 6 kids that are close. And it's just this natural pull to these. And it's not a special workout. And I'm talking about running. It's not a magic workout. It's not a magic coach. It's nothing of it's belief in yourself. It's that confidence. Like I think, the dials, you got to be years in for I think some of the dials to really, really matter. Like, this has to be or this has to be. But like, I think that's the most important thing in all of it is who you surround yourself with, what they value. And it's the bigger picture stuff that we mention all the time, the 5 people you're around, right? Like who we surround ourselves with, what they value, and are they close enough in proximity to my ability for me to believe that I can do what they can do? And then from there will be all kinds of drivers.
I'm convinced that it is extremely difficult for a parent alone to motivate a kid long-term in a sport.
I told Kay without question, like this, like every time we talk, I'm like, if you're running for me, stop.
Yeah.
Because you're just delaying the inevitable. Yeah. Like, and I don't say it that way, but like, do not, because you tell the story about baseball, right? About the dad whose son was like, I don't even like this. And I'm like, please, please do not do this for me.
But if she stopped running, you'd kind of be heartbroken.
Yeah, I would. It would suck. I mean, what you're going through, like I said earlier, is a huge fear of mine. I mean, out there playing soccer, I'm like, if
something bad
happens and she can't run at the county meet, and then of course to your point, then I zoom out after she doesn't, and I'm like, what is wrong with you? Because she has her 2 best friends are in boots, and one has been in for the entirety of the middle school season. And club, and one has been in it for club, and it's like they both got it taken away from them. So yeah, I would be, but I think at the end of the day, I would point them in another direction. And I had a parent with a unique perspective the other day. I don't know how you guys feel about this. He was on the 4-year kids train. He was like, my daughter, she didn't like X sport. I don't want to again like shine a light on this person, but there was a sport that she didn't like, and I made her do it, and by God, she ended up liking it. And he's like, so, I
think there's a level of that at the younger ages of encouragement till they get to that point of it's not bad to force them into.
Yeah.
Until they find it naturally.
Yeah.
But it's
I feel like in most areas of my life, I've been able to step back and see the forest and see through the trees. And so to be sitting here and not feeling like I can do that in this area to where it means more to me than some other things that I've been able to really, I think that's kind of that dynamic that we're talking about is like this is one of those areas that I haven't been able to fully be like, okay, well, this is, I should be good, and I'm excited about the opportunity. And
It's only been 7 hours.
I was gonna say it takes time. I mean, give yourself a
You're gonna have
week.
to see what else is out there and what other things that she can do.
I mean, the storyline will be written, and in a week, but that takes time.
yeah.
Well, at least, I mean, I guess the other thing too is it won't continue to happen, right? That's the reason for the surgery is
80-90% chance it won't, but I mean, her mom has torn both ACLs, both meniscuses. She has had 2 knee replacements at the age of 40. And so her genetically, there's some bad knees. And so like, then you wonder, cause then we go back to big picture, like at what point will she say, you know what? Like, it's not worth it. Cause she sees her mom work so hard and struggle so hard to be able, like, Angel is like one of the hardest, toughest women there is on the planet. She'll go down and grind out a mile and a half or an hour and a half on the treadmill until she can't walk anymore. She would be running minis with me. She'd be running the 50Ks. Like, if she had knees that gave her and her tendons worked well. And I mean, she is battling all the time just to have quality of life.
Yeah.
And so then you start to wonder, like, is she one injury away from, maybe this wasn't meant to be? And I've got to get to a spot where that's okay. Like, there's other stuff out there and there's other things. And how do we put this in perspective with life and everything else? And what are those other journeys? And I think that's the kind of journey that I'm going to be on over the next several weeks. And, leading up to surgery and the start of recovery is, what are those things?
well, in 40 plus years, we've never had to explore that because it's always been sports with us, or video games or something like that, right? But there's always been like some outlet for that. There's obviously been pauses in life where we weren't doing stuff like athletic, but like that's always been the path for us to building confidence and all of those other things that go along with it. So like, yeah, I think about that sometimes. I'm like, well, what if we were a family that was all into entertainment, right? We've all sung in some capacity at some level, right? We never really learned instruments. But what if that was our family's thing? Like, I think about that often. Now, I used to love to entertain people when I was younger, and like, what if we'd have done that? And then you have a daughter that's got a phenomenal voice, and like, you see all those things. It's like it would probably be completely different. But again, it goes back to returning to the mean. We were raised a particular way, and we're perpetuating it.
I mean, you're right. I mean, our value system is built around sports and achievement. I mean, it always has been. That's how we were raised. And like, still to this day, we are still pursuing achievements, whether that's PRs and running races or running streaks or, I'm off of the running bandwagon for a little bit, trying to get healthy, and it's golf now. Right? It's like I'm trying to pursue some level of excellence in golf. Which I don't want to wish that away. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think there's a good, healthy pursuit of excellence and taking advantage of the gifts you've been given. But I think trying to keep them anchored in purpose is really important. Like, really, what are you trying to do? And what are those accomplishments? I just think it's so easy to lose for those to be the end, right? The end game, as opposed to a means to something else much less trivial that we're trying to accomplish. And I think that's the hardest thing.
Yeah. I don't know when be an interesting history project. Like, when in the history of society, I'm sure from the day one, did we start rewarding things? Like, hey, you did this, you get this award, or you get recognized in this capacity, because it's filling ego, right? Your ego wants that attention and wants that thing. And so, because if we decided tomorrow that we wanted to go out to a long trail and do a 400-mile trail over 7 days, and I would feel more fulfilled from that than anything we've ever done, and it wouldn't be a trophy out there. But then I think, you see these trophies, and
you'd have to bury me out there.
Yeah. Well, you see these trophies and you're pulled, the ego pulls you. It's like, oh man. And even for the kids, like they've got to like, it's so strange because.
But without that, do you lose sight of like, because the other side of this, the slippery side of the coin is like, if nothing matters, then do nothing, right? It's like, it's got to matter enough to motivate you to take action. And if you're like, well, nothing really matters, let's just be honest, step back, you're never really going to accomplish much in the scheme of like really being great at anything. Like, so like, why do anything at all? Right.
Well, is the next level though, self-determining what to conquer? Cause like when you're younger, like
define conquer.
Well, I'm saying like running, right? 3-hour marathon, 4-hour marathon, whatever it is. It's like this very concrete, we've decided at some point that we'll even start with finishing a marathon, that this is a thing that you get a medal for, you get rewarded for, and then you take that,
unless it's California where you get it halfway.
Right, at 18 miles. But at some point, we've created these structure, and for me, I think the evolution of that is being able to look and see a challenge without someone creating said challenge for you, without it being like this structured thing. Like I was, I think I mentioned this a couple podcasts ago. Like for me on the roads, I'm done. I have nothing left to prove. I don't even know where that comment comes from. Nothing left to prove. Like, why did I have to prove that? Why did I feel like I had to prove that to begin with? But looking, there's something about humanity where you look in the distance and you see Everest and you're like, I want to conquer that. And you get, it's not this.
I think Todd talked about the brain, but like lack of contentment of like, well, because back in the day, you had to hoard the most food. You continued to acquire, right, to survive. Like not only did you have to join a tribe, but those tribes, if they killed something, they had to hoard and they would kill as much as they did to hoard as much as they could to make sure that they would survive. I don't think that skill's ever left us. Definitely from a consumption standpoint.
Well, I think those that didn't embody that skill died off in the lineage. So those of us that, the fact that we're here, those who survived, who is our ancestry, they had some screws loose in that regard, and it's the only reason they made it.
And so as you look at that, whether it's career or kids or sports or money, like, or stuff, like we are on this acquisition mode of life, and it's never good enough. It's never enough. And once we get it, we find a new mountain or idol, and we continue to climb the pointless mountain of life. Now, what you've built, which has been really cool, is like with these races, is just like you built community. You talk about bringing people together, and that to me is what it is about. And you're allowing people to go on a journey and find self-fulfillment and find purpose of doing something that's hard to do. We've talked about hard things. You've created an environment where people can go through this journey and get there. Mm-hmm. There's not a lot of those.
I think that's the brilliance of finding it something rooted in a stronger purpose, right? So I think we should people should be doing personal mission statements and that sort of thing much more than we do today. Companies have mission statements. They're trying to accomplish something. Look, I'm sure you still think about how many people are registered.
Sure.
How many people are signed up. Like how many people finished, what was the course records, how does that compare to other races? But the beauty of that is those accomplishments, achievements are rooted in a deeper purpose, which is what you're talking about. And I think that's where the magic happens, is you can take some of these aspects, you call them defects, at least as it pertains to the society we live in today, defects in our brain, right? Of why we just incessantly chase things that are out of reach and trivial for the most part, is how do you align that to a deeper purpose so you actually can capitalize on that and chase those trivial things seemingly for a deeper purpose. I mean, there are some people, one of our good friends who's a psychologist had a podcast of her own with doing parent type stuff. She talked about her biggest goal and the way she's oriented is for her kids to be contributing members of society and, socially have the empathy and the ability to interact and pour into people and support, those that are around them. Right. And that's like what she's oriented towards. That's her value system. It's not achievement. It's not sports. And I'm sure if there was something that happened to one of her kids that jeopardized that would be painful.
Yeah.
Right. So I think it's just a great reminder to making sure we're not completely losing sight of value systems and deeper purpose, because our brains will, in the absence of that, our brains will take us down dark alleys.
Sweet.
Youth sports.
Again.
Speaking of a dark alley.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that. It's a good discussion. It gives me hope. Yeah, so I hope you guys found something in that. I found out about 6 or 7 hours ago of the injury, and just talking through this has been helpful. That it is about the journey. It's not about the idols, and there's a different way to approach it. And I just love the community aspect of it, whether it's the community of the running community or the friend community that really should drive the child in youth sports to want to continue to pursue. And if they're doing that and they're on the B team versus the A team, or they're the Dennis Rodman, not the Michael Jordan, who cares? So with that, we'll see you next time. Thanks.